Trump now is putting out an executive order. Whoops, there it is. Executive order that he is expected to sign soon. He just announced it, maybe this week. He announced it a few days ago, or today. I think he announced it today and is expected to sign it later this week. Anyway, this will be an executive order that is geared to putting pressure against big banks over perceived discrimination against conservatives and crypto companies. The executive order will threaten to fine lenders that drop customers for political reasons. Now, the discrimination against crypto was real. There's no question that happened. It happened under the Biden administration. It happened under the influence of Elizabeth Warren. It happened over a period of a few months. I mean, it wasn't hidden. It was pretty explicit. It was out there. A Silvergate Bank was basically shut down because its whole business model was to bank crypto, and it was told by the regulators that was unacceptable, and it basically shut itself down. In New York Bank, whose name escapes me right now, but it'll come back to me hopefully soon, was basically closed by the regulators. At the same time, a couple of days after Silicon Valley Bank was shut down in 2023, and this is Silicon Valley Bank was shut down on Friday. It was shut down on Sunday. It is a bank that I know, because I know the bank well, Signature Bank. It is a bank that I know did not deserve to be shut down. It is a bank that was not any more insolvent than many other banks in the United States. All banks were basically insolvent at that point in time because of bonds, the bond portfolio. I did a show on that at the time. It was not insolvent, any more insolvent than the other banks. It could have probably managed the liquidity crisis that the banks were facing. It was shut down primarily because it was a bank that dealt with crypto. Many other banks were just told to divest, and they did. So this was an explicit policy of the banking regulators, inspired again by Elizabeth Warren and her campaign against crypto and her campaign against banks more broadly. This isn't surprising. It isn't surprising, but this idea that banks discriminate against conservatives is dubious. But the reality is, the problem is not the banks. The problem with crypto was the regulators who forced them to divest crypto, forced them to discriminate against crypto. And the problem, and as far as I know, banks don't discriminate against conservatives. And the thing about that is, even if they do, don't they have a right to do so? Isn't a bank a private business that has a right to discriminate in terms of who it gives loans to and who it doesn't? Now, they can't based on race because of the Civil Rights Act, but so it turns out that there's some laws that you could stretch and imply that affect here. For example, the Equal Credit Opportunities Act. Now, the Equal Credit Opportunities Act, again, was written from the perspective of racial discrimination. Whether it could be applied for political discrimination, I don't know. Now, I don't think any bank is going to try to defend itself over the right to politically discriminate, but shouldn't they have the right? Isn't that what private property means? And why would the government, what gives the government the right to go into a bank and say they're discriminating? Why is it any of the government's business who a bank gives loans to and who it doesn't give loans to? Shouldn't that be completely, 100% at the discretion of the bank? Now, again, I'm all for not allowing politicians to dictate to banks which businesses they can and cannot lend to, for example, crypto. But that's not limited to crypto. It's being done for other industries as well. Democrats do it regularly. I can imagine Republicans one day doing it. That should be banned. But that's on executive order. That would require rethinking of the relationship between economics and politics. Anyway, he wants to sue them under, or go after them under, the Equal Credit Opportunities Act, antitrust laws, and the Consumer Financial Protection Law. Of course, the Consumer Financial Protection CFPB agency bureau, Trump is trying to shut down. On the one hand, he wants to use it in order to protect conservatives. On the other hand, he wants to shut it down. Yeah, inconsistencies. Why am I surprised? I'm not. The draft executive order doesn't name any specific banks, but it appears to refer to an instance where Bank of America was accused of shutting down the accounts of a Christian organization operating in Uganda based on the organization's religious beliefs. On the other hand, the bank says it shut down the account because it doesn't serve small businesses operating outside the United States. Go try to figure that out. I think the bottom line is that this is an executive order that will allow Trump to go after any bank that rejects a loan from any person that Trump thinks should get a loan. I mean, I think that's what's behind this. Trump wants to be able to go in and tell banks who to lend money to and who not to lend money to. Why doesn't he have that power? He should have that power. He's king after all. The draft of the order that the Wall Street Journal has seen, so this is a Wall Street Journal article, also criticizes the role that some banks played in an investigation into the January 6 riots. That was a criminal investigation. They're probably subpoenaed. Why would they not play a role? Trump himself, when he was asked about this, recounted his own experience being dropped as a bank customer by several banks, including JP Morgan Chase. He said, the banks discriminated against me very badly, and I was very good to the banks. Well, it turned out he wasn't very good to the banks. It turned out that he filed for bankruptcy several times, which is not good for banks. It also turned out that in his application for mortgages, on several occasions, for several real estate projects, he overstated the value of the property. So no, Trump was trying to screw banks whenever he could. I mean, that's his modus operandi. That's what he means by out of the deal. So Trump was never good for banks. Banks had plenty of reasons for dropping him. Indeed, when Trump ran for president in 2016, during that period, or the period before that, his banking relationship had shifted to Deutsche Bank because American banks didn't want to have anything to do with his organization. Didn't want to have anything to do with him. Not because of his politics. He was a Democrat. Not because he's a conservative. He never was and isn't. It's because he was not a very good bank customer. Nobody wanted to have to deal with his shenanigans. That's why. So this is just another power grab by Trump. It's just another way for him to flex muscles against a group of institutions that he does not like. This is just another little step towards economic fascism, where the government controls everything. I mean, they already control the banks to a huge degree, but now it's completely politicized, or politicized even further. It's already politicized with the crypto and Elizabeth Warren. Now it's even more politicized, because now it's about whether it's his friends, and any one of his friends who doesn't get a loan the bank will be accused of discriminating against conservatives. It's absurd. Again, the crypto discrimination, if you want to call it that, was based on what the regulators told the banks they were allowed or not allowed to do. It wasn't a case of discrimination. It was a case where the banks were just following regulations. So this is just, more insanity on behalf of the Trump administration, more attempt to grab control, to regulate, to step in and control business, and in this case banking, which is already so heavily regulated. anyway, one of the things that Trump has got the bank regulators, his bank regulators, to do is to tell the banks they have to stop assessing reputational risk posed by their customers. So certain customers or certain industries might pose a reputational risk to the bank. Then under Trump, they will not be allowed to take that into consideration. And again, that's a way to clear his friends and to clear himself and to make sure that they get the kind of banking that he wants them to get, not based on the rule of law, not based on private property and the bank's rights to decide who to lend to or not, but based almost exclusively on the whim of the President of the United States. And remember, you might like Donald Trump, and you might think he's the greatest thing ever, but he's not always going to be president. There will be other presidents, and all these powers that are granted to the executives will one day be in the hands of somebody you don't like as much. But that would require thinking long term, and nobody wants to do that. That's real effort.